in a few hours. This was a true Job's message for me as far as consolation went. The heat was most oppressive. I had now entered the town for the second time, to be sent once more back to the glowing sands, with permission to come again in a few hours. Had I not been uncommonly hardy, I should have succumbed. But luckily I knew a method to help myself. I ordered my little guide to lead me to the house in which the wife of Baptista the innkeeper lived. During my previous residence at Beirut, I had accidentally heard that a French lady lodged in the same house, and occupied herself with the education of the children. I went to call on this French lady, and was lucky enough to find her, so I had at any rate so far succeeded that I had found a being with whom I could converse, and of whom I might request advice and assistance. My new acquaintance was an extremely cordial maiden lady about 40 years of age. Her name was Pauline Candice. My unfortunate position awakened her compassion so much that she placed her own room at my disposal for the time being. I certainly saw that my present quarters left much to be desired, for my kind entertainer's lodging consisted of a single room, divided into two parts by several tall chests. The foremost division contained a large table, at which 4 girls sat and stood at their lessons. The second division formed a kind of lumber room, redolent of boxes, baskets, and pots, and furnished with a board, laid on an old tub, to answer the purposes of a table. My condition was, however, so forlorn, that I took joyful possession of the lumber room assigned to me. I immediately departed with my boy guide, and by noon I was already installed, with bag and baggage, in the dwelling of my kind hostess. But there was no more walking for me that day. What with the journey and my morning's peregrinations, I was so exhausted that I requested nothing but a resting place, which I found among the old chests and baskets on the floor. I was right glad to lie down, and court the rest that I needed so much. At 7 o'clock in the evening the school closed. Miss K. then took her leave, and I remained sole occupant of her 2 rooms, which she only uses as schoolrooms, for she sleeps at her brother's house. My lodging at Miss K.'s was, however, the most uncomfortable of any I had yet occupied during my entire journey. From 8 o'clock in the morning until 7 at night 4 or 5 girls, who did any thing rather than study, were continually in the room. The whole day long there was such a noise of shouting, screaming, and jumping about, that I could not hear the sound of my own voice. Moreover, the higher regions of this hall of audience contained 8 pigeons' nests, and the old birds, which were so tame that they not only took the food from our plates, but stole it out of our very mouths, fluttered continually about the room, so that we were obliged to look very attentively at every chair on which we intended to sit down. On the floor a cock was continually fighting with his 3 wives, and a motherly hen, with a brood of 11 hopeful ducks, cackled merrily between. I wonder that I did not contract a squint, for I was obliged continually to look upwards and downwards, lest I should cause mischief, and lest mischief should befall me. During the night the heat and the stench were almost insupportable, and immediately after midnight the cock always began to crow, as if he earned his living by the noise he made. I used to open the window every night to make a passage of escape for the heat and the foul air, while I lay down before the door, like Napoleon's Mameluke, to guard the treasures entrusted to my care. But on the second night 2 wandering cats had already discovered my whereabouts. Without the least compunction they stepped quietly over me into the chamber, and began to raise a murderous chase. I instantly jumped up and drove away the robbers, and from that time forward I was obliged to remain in the interior of my fortress, carefully to barricade all the windows, and bear my torments with what fortitude I might. Our diet was also of a very light description. A sister-in-law of the good Pauline was accustomed to send in our dinner, which consisted one day of a thimbleful of saffron-colored pilau, while the next would perhaps bring the shoulder of a small fish. Had I boarded with my hostess, I should have kept 5 fast days in the week, and have nothing to eat on the remaining 2. I therefore at once left off dining with them, and used to cook a good German dish for myself every day. In the morning I asked for some milk, in order to make my coffee after the German fashion. Yet I think that some of our adulterators of milk must have penetrated even to Syria, for I found it as difficult to obtain pure goat's milk here as to get good milk from the cow in my own country. My bedstead was formed out of an old chest, and my sole employment and amusement was idling. I had not a book to read, no table to write on, and if I once really succeeded in getting something to read or made an attempt at writing, the whole tribe of youngsters would come clustering round, staring at my book or at my paper. It would have been useless to complain, but yet I could not always entirely conceal the annoyance I felt. My friends must pardon me for describing my care so minutely, but I do so to warn all those who would wish to undertake a journey like mine, without being either very rich, very high born, or very hardy, that they had much better remain at home. As I happened to be neither rich nor high born, the consul would not receive me at all the first time I called upon him, although the captain of a steamer had been admitted to an audience just before I applied. A few days afterwards I once more waited upon the consul, told him of my troubles, and stated plainly how thankful I should feel if anyone would assist me so far as to procure me a respectable lodging, for which I would gladly pay, and where I could remain until an opportunity offered to go to Alexandria. The worthy consul was kind enough to reply to my request with a shake of the head, and with the comforting admission that he was very sorry for me, it was really extremely unfortunate. I think the good gentleman must have left all his feeling at home before settling in Syria, otherwise he would never have dismissed me with a few frivolous speeches, particularly as I assured him that I was perfectly well provided with money, and would bear any expense, but added that it was possible to be placed in positions where want of advice was more keenly felt than want of means. During the whole of my residence at Beirut, my countryman never troubled himself any more about me. Section 22.